Remember the promise, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Quran 13:11. Start today. Lay one brick in your community's future. In 20 years, those bricks will form the foundation of a truly powerful, united Ummah. Today is June 17th, 2025, and the world is watching as Israel, a country smaller than many of our provinces, pushes deep into Iran's defenses, while Tehran's rockets claw at Israeli cities. Civilians tremble on both sides, and the clash threatens to drag the entire region into chaos. But ask yourself, how did we, the global Muslim Ummah, arrive at this point, seemingly unable to halt the ambitions of such a small state? Why do our governments falter, our economies strain, and our voices fragment when true solidarity and strength are within our reach? In this video, we'll explore why Muslims are so weak, the most basic reason that has left our Ummah divided and vulnerable, the current situation stake by stake, and the most important, the path forward, short-term and long-term solutions, realistic, faith-grounded actions you can take today, and a visionary strategy to rebuild our unity, economy, and influence for generations to come. This isn't about blame, it's about understanding, and so we can act. Stay with me, watch till the end, because if we want to stop feeling powerless, we must first see the full picture. Then together we'll carve out the solutions our Ummah so desperately needs. When we ask why the Muslim world seems unable to stand up to a nation smaller than many of our provinces, the answer traces back to one fundamental mistake. We quit critical thinking. From the golden days of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, where Muslim scholars led the world in knowledge, reason, and discovery, our Ummah was once the beacon of intellectual light. But after the fall of Baghdad in 1258 CE, something changed. We stopped rebuilding the spirit of ijtihad, the Quran's call to reflect, reason, and seek understanding. Instead, we turned to taqlid, blind imitation of the past. Look what happened. The Ottomans, with all their power, failed to lead innovation. While Europe embraced science and freedom of thought, we silenced our own scholars. In South Asia, many madaris reduced Islamic education to memorization only, disconnected from science, economy, and statecraft, and today, we are dependent. Muslim countries import 90% of their technology. Many Islamic nations cannot even produce their own basic medicines. When Gaza or Syria bleeds, we wait for the UN, an institution often biased, to tell us what's right. Our leaders fly to Washington, Beijing, or the IMF for approval before they act. Is this the Ummah that once led the world in healing, astronomy, ethics, and architecture? We're not weak because our enemies are strong. We're weak because we gave up our greatest strength, thinking. So here's our challenge. Reignite the spirit of ijtihad. Let the youth of this Ummah ask, reflect, learn deeply, not to doubt Islam, but to live it as it was meant to be lived, with purpose, insight, and leadership. Because critical thinking is not the enemy of faith, it is the very tool Allah gave us to protect it. We've made a full video on this powerful topic. Why did the Muslim world fall? The real reason we don't talk about. Click the link above and watch it till the end, because we can't change our future unless we first understand our past. In the next segment, we'll break down the current crisis. Who is fueling this war, and what does every major power actually want from us? To break the chains of our weakness, we must first understand what's really happening behind the headlines. Israel is not just defending itself, it has a clear goal: to eliminate Iran's ability to develop a nuclear weapon. That's why just days ago, Israeli jets launched Operation Rising Line. Over 200 aircraft struck more than 100 sites, from Iran's nuclear plants to its missile bases, crippling their defenses with stealth drones and Mossad-led sabotage before a single missile even landed. They've mastered the skies, but still rely on US firepower for the deeper, more dangerous targets. And the United States? It claims neutrality, but that's not the whole story. President Trump has praised the strikes as necessary, deployed strategic bombers to the Gulf, and publicly demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. Behind closed doors, Washington is already calculating how far it can push before igniting something bigger. Iran, on the other hand, is fighting for survival, its regime, its deterrence, its pride. Tehran has responded with a barrage of over 400 missiles and drones aimed at Israeli cities. Most were intercepted, but the message was clear: if you touch our soil, we will respond. Meanwhile, China watches silently but strategically. It imports nearly 2 million barrels of oil daily from Iran. A war in the Gulf would hit its energy supply hard. That's why Beijing is quietly stockpiling oil and urging de-escalation. But make no mistake, China is playing both sides. It invests billions in Iran's railways, and at the same time builds Tel Aviv's light rail, ensuring its influence no matter who wins. And Saudi Arabia? Silent but uneasy. Riyadh calls for ceasefire and humanitarian aid but avoids criticizing Israel directly. Why? Because it's protecting Vision 2030, its grand modernization plan, and its ties with the US military. Even Gulf stock markets have stayed flat, unsure of where this storm will land. Then there's Pakistan, a voice for the Ummah but limited in power. Islamabad has condemned Israeli strikes and supported Gaza with convoys of food and medicine. It's also navigating a delicate balance between its loyalty to China through CPEC and its long-standing military cooperation with the US. One misstep could cost billions or credibility. The truth is, the Muslim world is no longer self-reliant. Our economic engines run on fuel from others, our security depends on Western alliances, and our futures often are decided in rooms we don't sit in. And that's the heart of the crisis. Everyone has an agenda. Everyone is thinking 10 steps ahead, except us. But this ends now. In the next segment, we will talk about what you can do, not just protest or post hashtags, but real, powerful, short-term actions. And then we will lay down a long-term roadmap to rebuild our independence and reclaim our voice. We've now seen the agendas of global powers. Their moves are calculated, their priorities clear. But it's time we stop watching from the sidelines. We can't wait for leaders to act. We, the youth, the backbone of the Ummah, must rise now with wisdom and purpose. So what can we do right now, as students, as professionals, as everyday Muslims? First, diplomatic unity. If Muslim governments are hesitant, it's our job to push them. Reach out, email your foreign ministry, tag your officials on social media, demand that they call for an emergency summit through the OIC. If we can unite just a few key countries, we can force the international stage to listen. We must also reach out to nations like China, Malaysia, Turkey, who have economic stakes in Middle East stability, and urge them to mediate for peace. Second, economic pressure. Boycotts don't have to be endless to be effective. A focused, well-organized 48-hour boycott of key brands that fund oppression, especially from countries like Pakistan, Turkey, and Indonesia, can shake corporate boardrooms. Even more powerful, push our Islamic banks and sovereign wealth funds to freeze investments in any country fueling war. Imagine what happens when billions in halal capital say, not another dollar until the bombing stops. Third, humanitarian and media work. Let's raise our voices for the wounded, the displaced, the forgotten. Launch massive online petitions to open humanitarian corridors for medical aid into Gaza and Iran. And let's reclaim the media narrative. Don't just repost, become the voice. Share real stories from real people. Let the world hear their names, see their pain, and feel our unity. One authentic story can do more than 100 headlines. Fourth, grassroots mobilization. Create local peace cells in your mosques, universities, and homes. Organize prayer nights, food drives, blood donations, interfaith events. Show the world that Muslims respond not with hate, but with strength and compassion. And if you're a student of law, form rapid response teams, file emergency petitions in international courts. Let every strike be met with a legal record. Show them we see, we remember, and we act. None of this may stop a missile tomorrow, but it will slow the violence, it will bring attention. And most of all, it will bring us together. The Prophet, peace be upon him, reminded us, the world is a prison for the believer and a paradise for the disbeliever. Sahih Muslim. We endure not because we are weak, but because we are preparing for something greater. So stand firm, pray, speak, organize. Every small step you take matters. And in our next and final chapter, we will talk about the future, the big picture. How we as an Ummah can build the strength, knowledge, and leadership to make sure no small nation, no foreign power ever decides our fate again. Stopping the violence for a moment is one thing, but building real strength, the kind that lasts generations, that takes vision, work, and patience. If we want to ensure our Ummah is never this vulnerable again, we must build from the ground up, and every one of us has a role. Let's begin with education. We need to stop thinking of Islamic knowledge and modern science as separate worlds. Imagine creating institutions where Quranic interpretation is studied alongside medicine, AI, and climate science. Let's build centers of ijtihad that produce scholars fluent in both revelation and innovation. We must also support students who want to study abroad, not just to learn, but to return and uplift. And for those who can't travel, launch digital madaaris that teach Arabic, fiqh, and future-ready skills like data science and entrepreneurship, accessible to anyone, anywhere. Next, economic independence. What if Zakah and WKF were pooled strategically to build Muslim-led companies in green energy, halal pharmaceuticals, ethical tech? Imagine a future where we're not begging the IMF, but leading with our own wealth. Let's also create a trade zone among Muslim nations, cut the red tape and watch our intra-Ummah trade double. And through fintech, we can finally make Zakah fully transparent and effective. Real-time support for families, farmers, and startups. Then comes political unity. We need young voices in real positions of influence. A permanent Ummah Council of Youth, one representative from every Muslim nation, meeting every year, speaking as one bloc at the UN, at the OIC, with policy and purpose. And for security, why not develop shared defense systems, naval patrols, early warning radar, joint drills, so no one country stands alone? But it's not just about power. We also need diplomacy. Teachers, doctors, artists, sent abroad as cultural ambassadors, showing the world our compassion, not just our concerns. And finally, spiritual revival. If our strength isn't rooted in our connection with Allah, it won't last. Build Quran hubs in every neighborhood, places where families gather to recite, reflect, and work together on civic projects. And don't forget the power of stories. Support Muslim filmmakers, writers, musicians who remind us who we are, our values, our heroes, our vision. Let's also lead the way in interfaith service, work with Christians, Jews and others on feeding the hungry, teaching the poor, healing the planet. That's real dawah, by example, not just argument. All of this might sound big, but it starts small, a study circle, a fundraiser, a coding class in a mosque, one community project at a time, because Allah has promised us, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Quran 13:11. So don't wait. Start something, build something. Inspire someone. In 20 years, you'll look back and see that your small act was a brick in the foundation of a strong, united Ummah.